"Do you want me to release to you the King of Jews?" asked Pilate, knowing it was out of envy that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. May God bless the reading of his holy word.
Amen. Y'all get up for one. Yeah. All right, we are in Mark 15, so go ahead and turn there. We're in Mark 15. I'm going to promise to kind of end early. I think my watch is off, though. Oh, well, we'll end when we end. I literally just set that thing. What the heck? All right, well, if it gets close to 8 o'clock, somebody just yell at me because we're supposed to end at 8, okay? Can y'all do that? I know you guys got me. Yeah, thanks, Ethan. Okay, so we are in Mark 15. We're going to move quickly through this passage tonight, and we are going to be looking at Barabbas and our place in the trial. Barabbas and our place in the trial. That's our title for this evening. Thank you guys for pivoting with us tonight as we condense the service just a little bit. I know it's not supposed to get too cold, but just want those of you, especially that are driving, to be able to get home safely and everything. Next week, maybe, we'll be back to normal. We'll see. And I hope y'all had a great time at the table. I really hated not to be able to be there with y'all, but because of all the ice and everything, I was stuck on the West Coast. So, woo! It was fun. Having your flight canceled 3 different times. But, woo! Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, y'all did too. Shout out. Okay. And yeah, getting stuck and just going back to the hotel and being like, it's me again. I have nowhere else to go. So, but we're going to be in Mark chapter 15 today, and we're going to read verses 1 through 20. So if you would stand for the reading of Scripture, we're going to read this passage quickly. You can follow along on the screen. There are some Bibles at the tables nearby. If you need to borrow one, Shane's waving it around so you can flag him down if you need to borrow a Bible. But Mark chapter 15, I'm going to move around a little bit so that people can see. It says, very early in the morning, the chief priests with the elders, the teachers of the law, and the whole Sanhedrin made their plans. So they bound Jesus, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate. Are you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate. You have said so, Jesus replied. The chief priests accused him of many things. So again, Pilate asked him, aren't you going to answer? See how many things they are accusing you of? But Jesus still made no reply, and Pilate was amazed. Now it was the custom at the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested. A man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do for them what he usually did. Do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Asked Pilate, knowing that it was out of self-interest that the chief priests had handed Jesus over to him. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have Pilate release Barabbas instead. What should I do then with the one you call the king of the Jews? Pilate asked them. Crucify him, they shouted. Why? What crime has he committed? Asked Pilate, but they shouted all the louder, crucify him. Wanting to satisfy the crowd, Pilate released Barabbas to them. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace, that is the praetorium, and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began to call out to him, Hail, King of the Jews. Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. You can take a seat. So, you may not know this, but we have 2 more weeks left in Mark after this. 2 more weeks. We will have been in Mark for 40 weeks. 40, yes. Since the start of not this school year, but last school year. We have been traveling through the book of Mark. And so we are coming to the end. And right here at the end, there are a lot of things that this passage asks of us. You know, typically, I would say that it's not always the best idea when we read the Bible for our first question to be, well, where am I in this story? You know, some of us do that. We read the Bible and we're like, where am I? Where am I in this story? Where do I relate to? What part do I play in this story? And there's times where that's okay, and there's times where that's totally fine. It's what we're going to dig into tonight. But I would caution you guys, just kind of like a Bible study nugget, that there are times where the Bible is just speaking for itself. That you're not David trying to kill the Goliath that is your pre-calculus test or something. Or you're not like Esther, just like standing up against something because a couple of your friends are bullying you or something like that. Like, we conflate it sometimes. Again, that's not always a bad thing. I don't want to say don't do it ever, but it's not always the best thing to do. But with that being said, that's exactly what we're going to do tonight. Because our part in this trial, to me, is very evident. And there are two potential roles that all of us are playing, honestly, just about at any given moment, if not all the time. So a little bit of background on what's happening here before we dig into the passage. We see something very strange in verse 6. In chapter 15, Jesus has been brought before Pilate. He was the Roman governor of Jerusalem. We're going to talk more about him in a second. And in verse 6 it says, "Now it was a custom at the festival to release a prisoner whom the people requested." And so this was something that Pilate had started, because one thing you'll know if you study about Pilate at all is this was not a popular guy. You probably have some teachers like this in your school that everybody knows, avoid them because they are no fun. Because they don't want you to joke around, whether you are a well-behaved person and sometimes you like the occasional joke in there, or if you're the class clown, like avoid at all costs type people. Like, Pilate was a rigid person. From all that we can tell, he did not enjoy his time in Jerusalem, because all he experienced the entire time that he was there was the Jewish people being frustrated over the fact that they were under the thumb of Rome. And so what we know from history is that Pilate ruled over Jerusalem from about AD 26 to 33 is when he was the governor. And that entire 36. That entire 10-year period, we know that there were revolts, that there were insurrections like the one we hear about here, and there was constant just strife with the Jewish people. Pilate started taxing them heavily to build things like aqueducts. He started making them bow to Roman things, and the people were getting furious. That might have been what led Barabbas to do what he did. And so Pilate knows that he's got to keep these people under control, that he can't keep asking for more troops to be brought to this place that really isn't of much benefit to the Roman Empire. And so he's got to do something here. And so what he decides to do is a little bit of performative activism for you. Where he's like, I love you Jewish people so much. I know that the Passover is a really, really important thing. And what did God do in the Passover? He spared some people. So on the Passover every year, I'm going to release someone to you. Again, ancient Near Eastern performative activism at its finest. He didn't care at all about these people. Did not care about the prisoners. All he wanted was some cheap political points. And it gets turned against him in this passage. Because in verse 6, again, it says that it was the time for that to happen. And so a man called Barabbas was in prison with the insurrectionists who had committed murder in the uprising. The crowd came up and asked Pilate to do what he normally does. And he was thinking he was getting out of this. He's like, I don't think this guy Jesus needs to be killed. I don't think he needs to be crucified. I don't think that this is worthy of the death penalty. Like, he keeps asking that question. He keeps looking for an out. But what does the crowd do? They are crying out for Barabbas. They are crying out for Barabbas. And this trial lays out, I'm going to argue over the next couple minutes, it lays out the same choices as the Garden of Eden. And it essentially is asking one thing in this first portion that we're going to talk about here. Who will you serve? Who will you serve? Because, as is, you can throw it up, the first slide up there, Alex. Sorry, I turned around. I thought it was already up there. The first person that we see ourselves as in this story are the priests, the crowd, and the soldiers. And for that group of people, the question for them is, who will you serve? It goes back all the way back to Genesis chapter 3, this picture that is painted in the garden. Who will you serve? When the serpent slithered up to Eve and Adam and began to whisper lies and whisper deceit, asking, who will you serve? Pilate is quite literally asking them. He is the vessel, the mouthpiece here of saying, who do you want? Who is your representative? The king of the Jews? And they say, no, the murderer. And now what's interesting here is that Jesus in this passage represents the way of God, and Barabbas represents the ways of this world. Because there's a really fun thing that's happening here in the original language that we can't quite lay out in English. A lot of people call Jesus the Son of God, Son of Man. You probably heard him, the Son of something. Like he's constantly referred to as that. Even himself, he even refers to himself in that tense of, I am the Son of Man. Like he talks about this all the time, the Son of God. But what's interesting is that Barabbas is also the son of someone. What the original language tells us is that Barabbas, that name Bar, it's almost like having a junior next to your last name. It's like, oh, you're William II, so you're William Jr. or whatever. Like, so your dad must be William, otherwise, like, nobody names their kid like John III, and it's like, oh, is your dad the second? No. Like, nobody's doing that. And so Bar is literally connotating like he is the son of someone. We've seen this before already with the blind guy a couple of chapters back. Bar Timaeus, Bar, son of Timaeus. And what's interesting here in this passage is the picture that it's painting for us is that quite literally Barabbas' name, Bar, son of Abbas, that should sound a little familiar to us. Abba. Very name that Jesus cries out in the garden, this close relational name to God, that is quite literally that you would call your father when you are running into his arms, that Jesus calls God in that moment. Dad, literally. So Barabbas' name quite literally means the son of the father, the son of dad. The son of the one that we are close to. But what's so interesting is that while Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is the one, the Messiah, the promised one, the one that was foretold about him, that everything that is happening here in this passage, we could spend like 6 weeks on this passage just talking about all of the prophecies that are being fulfilled. He is the Son of God. Who is Barabbas? He is the son of the Father. And who is his father? But Adam. Of the flesh. He is a picture of the son of Adam who fell, who didn't live up to the standard of holiness, who chose himself over God. And quite literally here, we have like basically two examples here before us. The Son of God and following the way of God, and the Son of the Father and following the way of our earthly father, Adam. And so for the crowd, they are quite literally put in that position of who will you choose? Will you choose God or will you choose man? Adam and Eve put in the same position back in the garden. Will you choose God or will you choose your own desires? Will you choose yourself? And they chose sin, just like the crowd did. And before we look down our noses at the crowd, and we really just like get super frustrated with them, and we think, how could you? You know, a lot of people get really, really mad at Adam and Eve. I'm not sure if you or I were in their position, we'd do anything differently. I'm not convinced. Have you been around people? Some of you have. I can tell by the look on your face. Like, have you been around people? Do we always make the wise decision? Do we do what we know we should do? No. And so before we get high and mighty and begin to think with Adam and Eve or the crowd or whatever, how did you screw this up, man? Like, let's not have a little grace, but let's like see ourselves a little bit in this. Because what's the reality here is that the priests in the crowd didn't choose Barabbas, but they rejected the priests and crowd chose Barabbas because they rejected the way of Jesus. They didn't choose Barabbas necessarily because they loved him. They just didn't want to do the other option. And I feel like that can be our relationship with sin sometimes. I don't want to lie, but I really don't want to tell the truth. And so I'll just go ahead and do what I want to do. I don't want to forgive somebody, so I'm going to withhold forgiveness. Why? Self-interest. In verse 10, Pilate has asked them, do you want me to release to you the king of the Jews? Knowing it was out of self-interest that the chief priests handed Jesus over to them. They don't care about Barabbas. They may have liked him. They may have agreed with some of what he was doing there. He definitely was the more comfortable choice, which I'm going to get to in just a second. But they just didn't really want to do what Jesus was telling them to do because they said, you're not the one that can tell us what to do. And so they're like, we're going to do the opposite. How many of us have a little bit of that rebellious streak in us that when somebody tells us to do something, it automatically makes you want to do it less? Anybody? A couple of you are honest. You've got like some like real small hands up and stuff. Yeah, we do that. Like we don't want to be told what to do. And have you read what Jesus said to do? I heard somebody say one time, like, if you don't understand why people didn't want Jesus dead, you haven't lived long enough. I'm not saying we always have that, like bloodlust that we see in this passage, but like, there's times where spiritually, I'm like, no, you're not king of my life. I'm going to do what I want to do. Because what did Jesus do? He advocated that we forgive and care for our enemies, that we look to the people that are the complete opposite of us, and we look out for them. He advocated at this time that the doors were about to be opened for the world, not shut off, closing the Jewish people inside. He advocated that the outside of our lives is not as important as the inside of our lives. That not that the outside isn't important, but it's at least as important as the inside, if not less important. And so before we get too high and mighty here, and you're like, Johnny, I don't know how I'm a priest crowd or the soldiers here because I don't do any of this stuff. I would not be there. I would be the opposite side and cheering for Jesus. Man, we often in our lives make the comfortable choice rather than the challenging one. And that's exactly what they did here. We often make the comfortable choice of sin rather than the challenging one of godliness. I mean, again, what's easier to do? You get caught doing something wrong. Do you tell the truth and suffer the consequences? Or do you just like shave 50% off of the truth and maybe skirt by? What's easier to do? When you're hanging out with that group of people that all of a sudden the jokes start flowing and the gossip starts rolling and everything, what's easier to do? Jump in? Or say, no, we're not going to talk about this. We make the comfortable choice. And that's exactly what the people did. They may not have loved Barabbas because this is the entirety that we know about him from history and the Bible. He's mentioned in all four Gospels. But that's all that we know about him. We don't, it's not like he was some people's representative that they're all just chanting Barabbas and if only Barabbas was our leader. But what he was doing was what they were comfortable with. Like, we don't want these Romans ruling over us. And whenever the Messiah does come, it's going to be in military might. It's going to be like David. They're going to root out everything. And they're going to rule and reign with an iron fist. So we'd like somebody like Barabbas. I don't want this Jesus that's like a pacifist. That when he said, when somebody hits you, turn the other cheek. When he's sharing stories, he's like, guess who the good guy is? The Samaritan, the one that you hate the most. Calling out hypocrisy. It may not always be this cut and dry. But sometimes it is, and we don't want to admit it. So I want us to consider and to even ask ourselves right now, How have I been making the more comfortable choice in my life? How have I been choosing sin over holiness? Because it's easier. Because it's more convenient. Because it's not going to cost me really anything to do this. The hard reality is that when we do make that lesser choice, what we are doing spiritually is what we see these soldiers doing to Jesus physically. Where we proclaim with our mouths, Jesus, you are Lord, just like they're doing here. But it's mocking. It's choosing something lesser. It's choosing our own way and exalting ourselves rather than Him. And so that's some bad news. Now we're going to close with some good news. Because the second person that we see ourselves as in this passage is Barabbas. You are Barabbas. I am Barabbas. We are Barabbas. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know why that just sounded so silly. But this is what we see here. Like, if we are anyone in this story at any given point in time in our lives, like there are times where we make the correct choice, but you and I, we are always Barabbas. Always. Because let me ask you a question. What did Barabbas do to deserve the freedom that he received? He was there. Yeah, he existed. He was born. Good job, Barabbas. You had a lot to do with that. Like, he just was there. Nothing. He did nothing to deserve this. He didn't run up to Jesus and say, "Thank you so much, Lord. I have been hearing about you." He didn't run up to Pilate and be like, "Bro, I'm so cool with Rome now. Like, you don't even know how hard I am going to be advocating for Rome. Like, me and all my buddies, no more murders, dude. Like, no more terrorizing. Like, that domestic terrorism label you put all over me," because that's what he was. Like, I am a reformed man. I have been changed. Like, shout out Caesar. Get it tattooed on my back, dude. Like, I am ready to go. He doesn't do any of that. He doesn't say a word. He didn't repent of his sin. He didn't promise to change everything. He didn't clean himself up. Nothing. He didn't do a thing, and yet he walked free. Now, what did Jesus do to deserve being passed over? Having this violent man be freed instead of him? Nothing. Barabbas didn't deserve it. Jesus didn't either. There's never been a moment in the span of human history that has been more unjust than what happens to Jesus in this moment. Maybe you've experienced injustice in your life. Maybe you faced hardship because of something about you that you can't change. You've been treated differently, you've been put down, you've been whatever. And I'm not going to try to pretend like that's something that's easy, something that's not painful. But what I do hope you see in just this small snapshot is that Jesus knows what it's like to be you. He knows what it's like to have zero reason whatsoever to be experiencing what he's experiencing. There has never been a moment of injustice like this 2,000 years ago, where the Son of God, perfect, was passed over for a rebellious insurrectionist. And yet, what we see is Jesus is all-powerful. He's the Son of God. He can do pretty much anything that he would like to do. And even though he didn't deserve it, Jesus took Barabbas' place. There's a passage, I should have looked it up, where it literally says that he could have called a host of angels, been like, "We're done. This is crap. Like, I'm out of here. I'm done with you people. I'm done with this nonsense. I'm done with y'all." Like, that guy over me. Like, he could have snapped his fingers and it's all over. But he didn't. He took Barabbas' place, and in so doing, he took our place. Because what have we done to deserve the opportunity for the grace that we can receive? Nothing. We haven't done a thing. He took the cross that was rightfully ours. He took the punishment. He took the death. He took it all for us. Isaiah 53 says, he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And the punishment that brought us peace was on him. And it is by his wounds that we are healed. Jesus offers us life. He offers us a different way. He offers us grace when we have done nothing to deserve it. Students, you don't need to clean yourself up to receive the forgiveness of God. Some of you are walking around buried in shame right now because of a mistake that you made, or a series of choices that you made, or something that somebody put into your brain at a young age that you are less than. Jesus says that you are worthy. That you are worthy of forgiveness. That you are worthy of life. Not because of anything that you have done. So you don't need to clean yourself up, as so many pastors have said. The ground is level at the foot of the cross. Whether you gave your life to Christ at 7 years old before you even knew what a cuss word was, or you gave it at 21 after you had made a just list of mistakes that would go longer than your arm, that you can't imagine how you could be scrubbed clean. Jesus has offered a way of forgiveness for each and every one of us. And he says, I have taken that place. I am your replacement. You don't have to hang up on that cross. And so I know that especially for those of us that have been in church for a long, long time, or I guess I can just speak for myself, this is the way that the shame shows itself to me, is that I'm like, Jesus, I got to put myself back up there. Because I've made mistakes. Because I've done stuff. Because I proclaim to be a Christian exactly like we were talking about earlier. But yet I find myself in the position of the crowd so often because I choose what is easier. And so Jesus, please let me just go up on that cross. Let me pay penance. Let me just have suffering in my life so that I can just pay you back for the love that you have given me. And Jesus is like, what are you doing, man? And he says the same to you. You've got that list. You know what you have done that you regret, that in the darkest moments just fills you up with shame? Because, man, that shame hits hard, doesn't it? Part of the reason I was on the West Coast was I had the opportunity to go to a conference, and one of the speakers there was talking about shame. He's a licensed psychologist, and he talked about how it takes 3 seconds for shame to anchor itself in our bodies. 3 seconds. So you say a lie. You realize that somebody's caught you in that lie. You have that sinking feeling in your stomach that just overwhelms you and envelops you, and you feel like all of a sudden your head's starting to spin. Boom. Shame is anchored. And now whenever you think about that, some of y'all are feeling the shame right now. You're not even in the spot where that took place. It might have been weeks, months, years ago. And you feel that. Our bodies have been tainted by sin, and what that shame wants you to do is just go and punish yourself. And that is the opposite of what Jesus says. Jesus took us off the cross, so stop putting yourself back on it. Students, some of you need to accept the forgiveness of God in your lives. And as he says, you are forgiven. Go and sin no more. There are standards. There are expectations. Yes, absolutely. Yes and amen. There are good and right things that we should be doing. But there are times where shame will creep up in our lives and say, I don't deserve this freedom. Put me back in my chains. And that's where we need to remind it, the truth of Barabbas, that, man, I am Barabbas. What did I do to deserve this freedom? Nothing. What did I do to earn this? Nothing in the first place. I don't deserve it now, yet God is giving it to us freely. Who the Son has set free is free indeed, and that is the opportunity for each and every one of us tonight.